So, hi everyone. I'm here with Anneke from Hong Kong Polytechnic Institute, and we're going to have a little bit of a chat and just talk about what it's been like for her and for her institution and for her students to have transitioned to a fully online learning environment. Obviously, in Hong Kong, they did this a little bit before we did in the US and some Western countries. So we're hoping that by virtue of the fact that Anneke is here and her students are still working, that we just gain a little bit of insight about what this transition might be like for all of us who have started transitioning to fully online and learning environments more recently. So Anneke, can you introduce yourself a little bit more fully and tell us about your institution and what you teach?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm based in Hong Kong, and I've been teaching at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, the School of Design, for the past 3 years. I'm working in the undergraduate program for communication design, and I teach a lot of theory as well as history subject, but also studio subjects, and I guide students in their final year projects.
Great. And so are you teaching exclusively or primarily graduate students at this point?
Undergraduate students, yes. Yeah, I
Undergraduate students.
meet with graduate students sometimes, but that's just outside of my normal classes. Yeah.
Okay, that's great because I think the undergraduates in this situation probably pose a little bit more of a challenge.
Yes.
Can you tell us about when you made the transition to fully online instruction, and whether there's any information about whether you'll be going back to face at all this semester or ever?
Okay. So our semester was due to start in the first week of February. The week before that, we had the Chinese New Year. So in that week, we were already anticipating that this virus was coming, and we are kind of worried what's going to. The Education Bureau in Hong Kong decided that the primary schools and secondary schools had to move online. We were also in the universities, we were also given 1 week, so they postponed the semester with 1 week, given that week to convert our classes into online. So we've been teaching online since the start of the semester. Initially, our expectation, or what we were told by the management of the university, was that we were supposed to teach online until the end of February, so for the first 3 weeks of the semester. But along the way, every few weeks, the management would send another email and say, oh, we have to continue with online, and another 2 weeks, another 2 weeks, maybe the last 5 weeks of the semester we can return to face-to-face teaching, like these kind of messages. Because of which we also had to constantly adjust our schedules, and also sometimes the assignments that we had for our classes. But now we are expecting that for most subjects, the entire semester will be online. But for some special cases, such as studio subjects or other kind of subjects where you need to use labs or other kind of workshops to learn, there is possibly later on in April some opportunity to apply for some face-to-face with small groups of students, and all sorts of full gear, wearing full gear, and then facing our students. But that's something we haven't done yet, and we're hoping it might happen, but we're not sure.
Okay, so even though you've been doing this for longer, you still face some uncertainty, like many of us in the US and in European countries, where the messages have changed along the way.
Yes, yeah, of course they try to help us to return to face as soon as possible, because that's what we like and we're comfortable with. But they also consider, public health. So yeah, they have to follow what the Education Bureau is telling us to do. So.
Yeah, so did you have any previous experience with online instruction or working remotely? And sort of as a follow-up question to that, did you have a sense of whether your students have taken online classes maybe for their other subjects, or is this kind of new for all of you?
I think in general, this is quite new for everyone. In my case, I've coincidentally last semester, I started working with this platform called Slack. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Yeah.
Because we had some other things going on last semester in Hong Kong, and I was anticipating some students not being able to come to all the classes. So because of that, I had asked students to join this platform, and I would post questions after the lecture. This was a class, a history class, so more lecture seminar based. And then I used Slack to have some class discussion after the lecture time, which actually worked quite well. So, but that's the only thing that I'd done before. And I don't think any of the students have online learning experience. Our students, I think, are quite spoiled in that they have their own studio space, and they practically live here. They have like mattresses and stuff in the back of the classroom, and they can spend the whole night there if they have deadlines. So that's the kind of atmosphere we normally have in our school, and everyone seems to enjoy. And so now we had to really switch to going online.
Okay, so that's great to know because, some of us, I think that that's very much sort of the art school kind of model in terms of what would be analogous here in the US. And then, some people have that. And then some people, for instance, at my institution, even if they haven't done their design classes in a remote situation or online, most students will have taken the other subjects that they have to take, like English or sociology or math, and many of them will have taken at least one online course. So in
Right.
some ways, for us, at least in my own institution, students are maybe even more familiar with some of these platforms than some of the faculty are. So it just depends on our situations, right?
Right.
So you talked about Slack, and I assume you've probably kept using Slack. Have you found any particular techniques or tools for online instruction that you found particularly useful in this learning environment that you might recommend to other educators?
Mm. Well, I think it also depends a little bit on the nature of the students. I'm not sure how students in the US are or behave. In Hong Kong, not all students feel comfortable speaking up, talking in class, or in class is slightly better because we are all there and we can kind of find some students who like to speak a bit more than others. But in the online setting, I've noticed that if you're with a big group and you want to have a discussion, it's kind of difficult. It's hard to get the first one to say something. So what I've done I have different kind of classes. I have seminar type classes and also studio classes. So for the studio classes, is of course more active, right? It's about students working on their projects. So I divided the studio group, which is 21 students in my case, into 4 smaller groups. And then we have live meetings every week in smaller groups. And then people feel also more comfortable speaking and they know each other. They usually choose a group that, or friends, people that they're familiar with. So I've done that for my live tutorial sessions so far. For my lecture, I also have seminar class, so I have a lecture component where I tend to pre-record via Zoom my lectures. I do that in about maybe 10-minute video clips, like I divide it into different chapters so that students can switch from one video to the other and they don't have to go through an hour of video all at once. So I upload small clips of video of my lecture onto Google Sites. I use Google Sites where I combine all the information for the subject, so subject briefs, links to submission folders, reading folders, links to the Hangouts. I've been using Google Hangouts as well for the studio component of my class. So I upload 10-minute videos, say an hour of lecture, but then divided into 10 minutes clips for them to follow. And then yeah, that's what I've been doing for my bigger classes. I have 40 students there, and I'm a bit hesitant to use live streaming for that, because I worry that students are unable to connect, or there's a lot of noise going on, like people messaging me while I'm trying to lecture. So I've been a bit hesitant trying it out, but I might do later on. But so far I've pre-recorded for that particular class. Um, yeah, and then I also teach, or I guide final year students, and for that I have done yeah, live meetings with either one or a pair of students, and then we've done yeah, very long discussions about their project. So I generally spend more time now online meeting all the students than I've done in the classroom setting.
So that's, I'm so glad you ended with that, because as somebody who's taught online before, we were all forced to teach online, my colleagues and friends have kind of heard me complain about online teaching as just much more time intensive for the faculty member. And it sounds like you found that to be the case as well. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yeah, not only for the meetings, because you don't want to tell students, oh, now I have to hang up or something, and I spend enough time with you or something like that. You don't really want to do that unless you have another meeting lined up. That also sometimes happens. But also in terms of pre-recording my lectures, I often tend to start talking, then I make a mistake, and then I start over again. So even getting through the initial embarrassment of hearing yourself, speak in lectures is really quite, yeah, that all adds up to the time that you spend on preparing for your lecture or for your meeting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've had that experience too, where you have to end up doing three or more takes of something, or because
Mm.
something happened in the house, or, something
Yeah.
happens where you just can't, the audio didn't work right. And I usually start over. I know that there's the option to sort of try and edit that out, but I always usually figure out if it's a short lecture, I can probably start over and do it faster than work on an editing program. So,
Yeah, there's
yeah.
also a reason why I've made it 10-minute clips, so then I can take a break after every 10 minutes. But yeah, I tend to also take longer breaks than intended, so it also takes me more time to record a 1 hour lecture than if I were to do it in one go.
Right, and certainly more time than if you were to just speak the lecture to the students face to
Yes.
face. Yeah.
Mm.
How have you found the transition in terms of your thoughts, or maybe even your colleagues' thoughts about what is success? Has that had to evolve at all? Do you feel like you've had to relax your standards, or is it just more work to get the same results? Or can you not tell yet?
Mm, I think I think the standard that I would have in terms of the quality of my teaching hasn't changed, or maybe even had gotten well, I still have a high standard of delivering good teaching. That also kind of adds pressure on us, having to do it online, because you feel kind of limited in um, you know in delivering your message, so to speak. In terms of the assignments, and also in terms of expectations from students, I haven't quite adjusted or lowered the standard, but I think what I keep having to remind myself is the context of the student. Hong Kong has usually quite small living spaces, for instance, and if students are at home in a small apartment, maybe other family members around, some pets, that all might affect their focus, their ability to work on projects and to have meetings. Not even mentioning the internet connection that might play up sometimes. So yeah, I think we've had to relax standards in that way, that we can't really expect students to be as engaged as they would be if they were in the classroom. Um, Also in terms of assignments, because we also realize that students have to get familiar with online teaching and learning, and with finding a way of working that works for them. We've at least in the case of my subject, I can't speak for my colleagues, but I've had to reconsider the assignment quite a bit. Not just in terms of what students are able to do, but also in terms of what we can do with the subject if we can't meet face to face, and if we can't have testing or I teach a subject called it's on exhibition experiences. So normally students, they build their exhibition experience, like interactive exhibition installations, and obviously there's something that we can now not really do. So I've had to not quite lower the standard, but I've had to change the assignment where we focus more on research and concept rather than production and final outcome.
Hmm. Yeah, that's helpful to hear, because I think a lot of faculty are going to be experiencing some of the same challenges, whether it's small spaces or just, brothers and sisters at home, family at home, pets at home, being sort of shut up at home. It definitely can affect students' ability to focus and or just have the time to engage with class projects. So, do you have any words of encouragement or advice or thoughts for any of us who maybe are moving into a fully online situation for the first time, as somebody who's been at it a little bit longer than we have?
Right. Well, I've been thinking of that. I think what I went through, I guess, in early February is kind of resisting having to do this, but of course you can't because you have to. So by just accepting it already kind of makes it easier for yourself. I've also given up the hope that we can have proper face-to-face classes, although we have been promised that we can, but we have to wear like visors and goggles and masks and stuff. So it's still very, it's not the same kind of atmosphere that you would normally have in your studio classes. So accepting that this is our new condition is, I think, it took me a few weeks to do, and after that I just went. Of course, we had to go with it anyway, but after accepting it, I was able to be more creative in finding ways to engage students, or to have like fun exercises on Slack, or have some interesting discussions through the live session. So accepting, and also what we did actually with in our school, we have different WhatsApp groups. So we have one group with all the colleagues from the entire School of Design, and then we also have a WhatsApp group for just our program, the communication design program, and just everyone is sharing tips and tricks, or how it went, especially in the first few weeks of moving online. Everyone was reporting back to each other how their class went, and what went well, what didn't go so well, what they would do differently next time. So that really gave us a sense of being in it together. The kind of so that was nice. Also quickly familiarizing yourself with the platforms. Again, I was a little, not hesitant, but I wasn't necessarily looking forward to it, I have to admit. But then once you are more familiar with the platform, and you realize your students are also getting familiar with it, then it makes it easier. Yeah.
Great. Yeah, that's super helpful. I mean, I think just I think we all had that sort of moment of resistance, or just like, oh, I really don't want to do this. And many of us who are just starting this process, we're where you were in the first weeks of February. So I think just hearing from you and hearing your perspective about coming together as a faculty, and that there are tools that you can use, and you can still have engagement with students, 6 or more weeks out, is really helpful for those of us who might be at the beginning of this process and kind of just wondering what we're going to lose. It sounds like, of course, there have been compromises, but it's nice to hear that you're still able to run your classes, you're still able to engage with your students, and while some of the metrics and expectations have changed, you're still able to do what we do as educators, which is engage with and teach our students.
Right.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Annika. I think this has been helpful for those of us starting out, and I really appreciate you taking your time at the end of your day, whereas I'm at the beginning of my day, and sharing some of your thoughts and ideas on teaching online with faculty and colleagues in the US and in Europe.
Yeah, no problem. And thanks for having me. And good luck to everyone. Yeah, in transitioning to online teaching. Yeah.
Thanks.
Mhm.